Good morning and welcome to Ask the Restart. I'll make a note on that. Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza is a community partner specialist for the program, and he's here with us throughout the series. Good morning, John, and who do we have on the line today?
Well, thank you, Joe. This morning we have Debra Reuvenny, who is the director of Pennsylvania's Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant. Deb was appointed to that position about a year ago, and it was her career experience working in early intervention and early childhood education and her passion for the health and wellness of young children that paved the way for her to facilitate Pennsylvania's effort in providing at-risk children with high-quality early learning opportunities to close the achievement gap. And prior to her current position, Debbie was director of an early intervention program serving children ages 0 to 3. In this role, she traveled to Azerbaijan as a consultant to a non-governmental entity focused on deinstitutionalization. Deborah provided guidance on program development and professional development to therapeutic mobile teams working with children identified with special needs. Welcome, Debbie, to the program.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you first about the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with it, what is the overall goal of the grant and the program?
Well, the overall goal is the provision of high-quality learning opportunities to reduce or eliminate the achievement gap for children at risk. It's not about providing slots for children, rather about enhancing much of the work that's been going on in the Office of Child Development and Early Learning to, really make a difference for our kids at risk. It's a federal grant that Pennsylvania received in the amount of approximately $52 million, and it began in January of 2014 and will run through the end of December 2017.
Now, a big part of the grant focuses on what we refer to as P3 alignment. That's alignment of curriculum and so forth from preschool, actually from birth to a large extent through grade 3 to reduce or eliminate that achievement gap. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. We have 8 projects that are delineated in our Early Learning Challenge Grant, and all those projects really focus on that P3 alignment. It also creates great collaboration between OCDEL and the Department of Education and Human Services. So it is kind of an overarching approach to all the work we're doing, and I can get into more detail with specific projects.
In the grant, there's mention of special attention being given to 50 high-risk communities. What criteria was used to determine those communities at high risk, and were any of them here in our general area, which would be northwest and north central Pennsylvania?
So we went through an RFA process where we sent out proposals to all communities in Pennsylvania, and in that process, we asked communities to join as a collaborative. That is, we wanted our early learning programs, we wanted school district programs, we wanted libraries, special education, early intervention, WIC, health, whatever a community deemed partners needed to be working together to look at their community, see where their high-risk populations are. So we wanted to get very granular. We wanted to be working between one school and one early care and learning provider with all these other community supports around them where they had children at high risk, whether it was economics, whether it was homelessness, whether it was early learning challenges, early intervention. whether it was other at-risk categories. I mean, it really could have run the gamut of at-risk categories. And we asked these communities to come together and create a proposal on an innovation that's specific to their community, because we know that, each community has its local challenges. And there's a lot we can do at the state level, but we can't always tailor-make it to a specific community. So this was an opportunity to say, what are the strengths, what are the challenges in your communities, and what innovative practice can you suggest to really close the achievement gap for your children at risk in those communities? We asked them to focus on family engagement. We asked them to focus on strengthening the relationships between the early childhood providers and the schools, first through third grade. And we asked them to strengthen their community collaborations. And we called this our Community Innovation Zone.
Now, I wanted to follow up because we who are closely aligned to what we call P3 alignment kind of know what that's all about. But for our listeners who may not be familiar, could you kind of touch on what that means and how that impacts a community and a family when we talk about working towards P3 alignment?
Sure. The way that we talk about P3 alignment, we really base our framework on Dr. Christy Cower's framework, who was originally at Harvard and is now at University of Washington. And her framework she calls it Framework for Planning, Implementing, and Evaluating Pre-K to Third Grade Approaches. And when she talks about pre-K, she defines as anything prior to kindergarten. And she has 8 buckets in this framework. And those 8 buckets include teacher effectiveness, principal effectiveness, community engagement. There's 8 different buckets, and I apologize, I don't have them all memorized, and I don't have them in front of me. But you can easily just Google, if you just Google Framework for Planning, Implementing, Evaluating Pre-3 Third Grade Approaches, you'll be able to see that. So that's the framework that we look at. It's not just about what happens in an early care and learning program and what happens in a school, but rather what the relationship is between those entities and how the community at large supports that. And so that's what we use her framework for, that basic work. And we also have on PDE's website, we've also gone into a little bit more detail about how we frame that within the work of the Department of Education as well.
And essentially, just kind of looking at alignment per se, it's basically getting all of the parties basically on board, particularly the schools with kindergarten through third grade, with the preschoolers and the preschool sites, so that the expectations are very clear, and there's a crosswalk basically from when a child is in preschool, so that there's a clear indication of where the child should be as they transition into school and through the grades, the early grades. Is that correct?
I would say it's about looking at your community, the school, together with their surrounding early care and learning providers, and starting at birth or even prenatally and saying, how do we build a relationship that's going to transition all the way from prenatal up through when the child goes into kindergarten and onward in their educational career, and as we say, up to grade 3. I mean, many of us would like to say, yeah, let's push that up to grade 4 as well.
Right, exactly.
But so to me, in my mind, it's more about changing adult behaviors so that we are looking at the child, or even, again, the parent as they're preparing to have a child, and what are all the different areas we're going to be looking at to make sure that the early care and learning program is ready, that the family is ready, and that the school is ready. We're not saying that the onus is on the schools to be ready. We're saying the onus is on everyone. The onus is on the libraries. The onus is on the health systems. The onus is on the early care and learning programs. We all hold responsibility for helping those children at the highest risk be prepared for every stage of their learning experience.
Since I am the only, quote, civilian person on the program, and you two are professionals in the field, I like to ask what are called kind of everyman type of questions. And one of the questions I would have is we tend to think of the inner city as being areas where learning, especially early childhood learning, may not be a top priority. But are there not rural areas that face the same challenges in terms of encouraging young people to learn before starting school? And what are the particular problems here in areas like ours, generally a rural area?
So rural areas have, we talk about urban poverty, we talk about rural poverty, and they look very different, but the impact on the children, can be devastating for a child's educational career. And when we look at rural poverty, one of our big issues is, besides economics, is distance. Distance from a high-quality early learning centers, distance from the schools, the time kids have to spend traveling, distance from health organizations, from WIC. I mean, just distance is a huge piece that really limits. We don't have libraries on every corner in a rural area. We don't have health clinics on every corner. All these different maybe geographic factors really impact many of our kids' abilities as they enter learning. And in terms of their health, too, we know that the children who are dealing with chronic illness can't learn. If you don't feel well, if you have a headache, we know this as an adult, how difficult it is. If you can't get to the eye doctor to get your eyes checked to make sure you see well, you can't see the board, you can't see the kind of things you're supposed to be learning in front of you. So, even though those risk factors are different and look different in rural, they still have a major impact on our kids.
One of the things that's part of the race to the top, as part of the P3 alignment is the governor puts on or basically sponsors institutes. And there are 4 that are actually going on right now. We had one that was completed just recently in Erie, which was to serve our Northwest community. Can you talk a little bit about how those institutes are put together and what the whole purpose and how it's all planned out?
Sure, but let me just say, I had the opportunity to come to Erie. That was last week or the week before, and boy, what a beautiful area of Pennsylvania that is.
Yes, especially
I really
in the
enjoyed
summer.
my time there. I loved meeting everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but I really look forward to it next year, and I'm going to plan to stay the whole time. So, we had a great participation in Erie, and I'm telling you, you could feel the electricity in the room. It was really exciting. But anyway, so we have had 3 so far. June 14th through the 17th, we had in King of Prussia. June 21st through the 24th, we had in Monroeville. Then July 12th through the 15th was in Erie. And now next week, from July 26th through the 29th, we're going to be having the Governor's Institutes in Scranton. So we've titled these Governor's Institutes for Educators Pre-K to Grade 3. But again, this is very much like our Community Innovation Zone. We asked these teams to bring together their community because, again, our framework tells us that we cannot be working in isolation. We have to be working with all our community supports. So we asked them to bring together all the professionals as well as their community partners and to focus on strategies to promote a comprehensive set of early learning standards and ask them to develop action plans that would be implemented in their local setting. And OCDEL will be providing follow-up to these teams throughout the year as they implement their plans, both probably we're thinking about trying to get everybody together maybe one time this year, face-to-face. Not sure if that's going to be able to happen, but we really are trying to get as face-to-face as possible with our teams because we know how much effort they're putting into this work that they're doing.
Yeah,
and I think can I just go on one more second? I think what was really exciting, what we did this year, is bringing in Nancy Aronson. Nancy is from Philadelphia, and she's a former teacher, and she currently is higher ed instructor at Drexel, and she's also an author. And she's an expert in the areas of practical collaborative methods for organizations and communities facing complex issues. And what she was doing was laying the groundwork for the teens who are attending the Governor's Institute for their ability to create change in their communities, because that's what this Governor's Institute, again, is about. It's very similar to the idea of the Community Innovation Zone, is to look at your community, where are your challenges, where are your strengths, and give these teams the skills to be able to work together to really make change in their community.
One of the elements of Race to the Top is what you call family engagement. Explain what that means and how important it is, and how can that be achieved, especially in families where learning is not necessarily a top priority?
Well, I think, family engagement we used to call parent involvement, or, parents coming to schools and participating in activities at schools, or making sure their kids got their homework done. I mean, that's years ago what we used to think was true family engagement, but that's not. It doesn't even come close. What family engagement is as a institution, whether I'm a school or whether I'm an early care and learning program or whether, again, I'm a library or WIC or whatever, what do I understand about my families that I serve? How do I know what their needs are? What data am I using to know what their needs are, whether they're educational needs, medical needs, geographical needs? And with that understanding and with that data, what can we do to support them and work together and collaborate with them so that their children's experiences are as instructive and valuable as possible in helping them, be ready for their learning career. So it really is about engaging with families, not to families, but working together and collaborating together. And we know from research that this is one of the major activities that institutions need to do in order to really impact children's growth. So that's the approach we take to family engagement, and it's a huge part of our Governor's Institute. It's a huge part of our community innovation zones, and it's also one of the reasons that the Race to the Top is supporting a yearly family engagement conference. And this year's conference is going to be on October 14th at Patan. And if you'll indulge me to just talk a little bit about that, we're going to have some incredible keynote speakers. Well, the title of the conference this year is Supporting Strong Partnerships for Children's School Readiness and Achievement. And our keynote speakers are going to be Camille Catlett, who the early childhood community knows really well. She's a scientist at the University of North Carolina's Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute. And then we're also going to have Karen Mapp, who is a senior lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And, we're really putting in, as is the federal government, a lot of effort into our family engagement strategies. We have in our early learning standards, we have family partnership standards that when we're working with our community innovation zones and with our Governor's Institutes, we're really putting a focus on those. I mean, that's how important that they've actually become part of the learning standards for early education.
One of the other areas I wanted to address, Debbie, is as part of Race to the Top is, and this particularly involves family engagement, is the new kindergarten entry inventory. Because Lord knows there are many children that were parents, sometimes children are not ready for inventory, or not ready for kindergarten when we expect them to be. And then at the same time, we have the first day of kindergarten, and there's children that show up and were never actually registered. Tell us a little bit about how the kindergarten entry inventory process works and how that's going to be an improvement.
Okay, so Pennsylvania has created this reliable instrument, the kindergarten entry inventory. There are other similar inventory. I wouldn't say similar. There are inventories and kindergarten entry assessments that are available from vendors. But Pennsylvania created its own because we wanted it focused on our early learning standards, and we also wanted it to be sustainable so that we can provide it free to school districts. So right now, the kindergarten entry inventory is mandated for all priority and focus schools, and those are schools that have been identified in the bottom 15% of school improvement, the Pennsylvania Department of Education school improvement work. So these schools are mandated to implement the kindergarten entry inventory, but we're also trying to message, again, through their community innovation zones and through Governor's Institutes, to any schools or any school districts to volunteer to use it, because the KEI is a reliable reporting tool, and it offers teachers an instructional strategy for understanding and tracking students' proficiency at the kindergarten entry, which you just spoke about, John. It provides a consistent set of kindergarten outcomes across the Commonwealth. It's based on Pennsylvania's learning standards for early childhood. It includes 30 standards-based indicators, and then it reports the data in the domains of social emotional development, English language arts, mathematics, approaches to learning through play, health, wellness, and physical development. And in terms of process, the kindergarten entry inventory is intended to be used by kindergarten teachers to record their students' demonstration of skills within the first 45 calendar days of the kindergarten year. And we had our cohort 1, which was last year, and the feedback we got from teachers and administrators was so positive. It was really great. They found the instrument extremely useful. I think if there's anything that I can say to your audience, it's that I want families to understand, I want school administrators to understand, I want teachers to understand that this is not a high-stakes assessment. This is not about looking at teachers' effectiveness. This is not looking at schools' effectiveness. This is it's an inventory. That's why we're not calling it an assessment. It's looking at these different domains that I just spoke about and giving a kindergarten teacher a sense of where are the children in my classroom? Where is each individual child? What do they look like as a group? And how does that help me prepare for my kindergarten year? And the feedback that we're getting from teachers, like I said, is just so positive, and they've been able to engage in really data-driven conversations with their administrators saying, I cannot jump right away into starting to teach, literacy or, some of these guidelines that we have in kindergarten, because I need to be working first on getting my children used to working together in a group, knowing how to interact with each other, those social emotional skills that we know are so important. But what this is giving the teachers is the data to be able to have those conversations with their colleagues, with their administrators, and even within themselves. And you can get, on PDE's website, we have a Cohort 1 summary, and we have some of the teachers and administrators' quotes in there that I think would really be interesting for your listeners to read, because it's been a really positive experience for them. And now we are recruiting for Cohort 2. We have our focus on priority schools that we are recruiting, but we're also, again, offering it out there to any schools that would like to volunteer. And you have until August 15th to do that. Again, there's information on PDE's website. There's also a KEI website. It's kei-pa.org, where anybody can get information.
Well, thank you, Deb. Boy, the time has really flew, but I appreciate you being on our program and talking so well about Race to the Top, because it is an integral part of our early learning and our programs that we do in Pennsylvania. And thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you very much.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.